Good morning, Jersey Shore. It is short time with Vin and Dave, the place, the home, the morning, where it is short time all the time. All Jersey Shore, Dave. Good morning.
Good morning. You are fired up. Not that you're ever not fired up, but you're ready for this morning. Let's do this.
I'm ready to go. I'm rocking and rolling. You got the coffee going. I've already had 2 cups.
Again, we do have the coffee. I just do not see the food. I'm telling you, you've been talking about this.
I know.
Show me
the food.
Thank you.
One of these days, I'll follow through.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yes,
Keep on me.
Sure. All right.
So
I'll send you some texts, reminders, notes, or something. Oh, maybe a post-it.
Reminder.
How about post-its? Some post-its right on the post on your computer there, on by the microphone. I'm on it.
Bring in pancakes now.
We need David Burke for that.
Oh, yeah. Hey, we'll have him back. We'll have a celebrity guest chef just make us food.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, guys, I'd love to do that.
Yeah. So we got a great show on deck this morning. A couple of great guests that we want to get to. We're excited about. Both guys have great stories. Phil O'Hara and John Roth will get to. But, Dave, I want to give a quick shout-out to somebody else we had on our show about 3 weeks back, Jim Raffone.
Yes.
CEO and founder of Jar of Hope. Tomorrow is the day where
it is.
He's heading out to climb Mount Everest. It's 6 days up the mountain, 6 days back down.
Can I give you one of these? Or give him one of these? That's tremendous. So, first of all, great interview.
Yeah.
And the fact wow. I have no words. I mean, think about doing this. Think about the preparation, everything he's done to train, to get ready, physically and mentally, to take this on. Yeah. And oh my, we wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, Jim, if you're out there listening right now, we're thinking of you.
Yes, we are.
We're with you.
Well, we're not.
Not in a physical sense, but you know.
Yeah, no.
We're there with you in spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It makes me think of a couple things. Number one, we're so proud of him. And what he's doing. Yeah. I have to ask you this.
All right.
Now that we're on this topic a little bit about just something tremendous that what he's doing. The training and everything that went into it. Is there anything that you haven't done yet? Maybe bucket list type thing that you're like, I've got to do this. I just haven't had the time or whatever the circumstances to get you there. But is there something?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess sort of a life goal, bucket list kind of thing.
Yeah.
I want to visit all 30 Major League ballparks.
I like that a lot. I've always talked about doing it. Vin, let's get this done.
We're hitting the road.
Okay. All right.
So I think that'd be really cool. I mean, the activists, obviously, I've been to both Yankee stadiums in my life.
You've been to City, yes?
No.
Ooh.
So not City or Shea. I've been to Citizens Bank Park in Philly.
It's tough to go to Shea, but I'll get you to City.
I've been to Fenway Park in Boston, but only for a tour. I haven't seen a game there yet.
Okay.
But yeah, no, you look at all these games played, whoever's playing them. I mean, some of these stadiums in the country, they're just gorgeous.
I went, I'm going to say it was 2016, to see the San Francisco Giants game out there.
Oh, in San Fran?
Ooh, beautiful.
Oh, that's one of the ballparks I really want to go to.
Absolutely gorgeous, and just everything about it was the location, the water's right there.
McCovey Cove.
It's outstanding.
The giant Coke bottle.
I'm right with you. I think that is, so what you need to do, in my opinion, if you're going to go after this goal,
all right,
and this is something I didn't do properly, but whatever, I make mistakes. When I was out there, I should have done a better job of, okay, I'm in California, what teams can I hit up that I'm out in California?
That makes sense.
You know what I mean? Now, again, it's not that these other
Dodgers,
areas are close.
Giants, Angels, Padres.
Right, it's not like it's close, but it's something where gas up the car and get it done.
Yeah.
Because how many times am I out that way?
That's a good point.
You know? So, and I also thought the other thing, too, is I would love to do the same thing with football games.
Yeah.
Because think about that. So if, let's say, you went out and you wanted to go to California, again, maybe you get if you're lucky enough, you have the Sunday game, right? And then hopefully another team is playing the Monday game, Monday Night Football.
Makes sense, yeah.
Or how great would this be? Actually, it wouldn't work because typically those games are going to be in the afternoon, the 4 o'clock game, 1 o'clock their time, just because of the time zone.
It depends, yeah.
But
on the day and the week.
How great would it be to take in a 1 o'clock game there, their 1 o'clock, then have, if the Sunday night game is in California as well. You see where I'm going with this. Is really kind of plot this out. Everything would have to be perfect.
It out. Yeah.
I mean, something like that would be very cool. So again, I talk
Raymond
about
James Stadium in Tampa, where the Buccaneers play.
Yes.
I think it was one of those football stadiums that I'd love to see, the big pirate ship and the cannons and everything. That's a fun stadium I'd like to visit.
Another one would be Chicago.
Oh, Soldier Field.
Again, I would say go earlier in the year, not later in the year.
The same thing with Lambeau Field in Green Bay.
Green Bay. It's funny. I have some friends out in Green Bay, and they're like, "Oh, you got to come." I don't know why I haven't done it. But again, that's something you want to do the September game. You don't want the late December game.
Where you're kind of bundled up beyond belief and trying to get warm any way you can.
I like where your head's at.
Although some people, I guess if you're used to that weather in Green Bay or Chicago, there are some people who got, a painted chest, some of the guys out there. I'm like, dude.
First of all, nobody wants to see me look the visual of that.
Well, and then, of course, I'm
just saying two things: the visual as well as how I would be feeling. That would be you have to mentally put yourself
I can't even
in
imagine being in that kind of cold weather where it's.
Oh.
Wow.
But I love the goals. Those are great goals. Those are great
sports
things. Sports goals. The bucket list. Go do them. Why not? You know what I mean? That's it. Love it.
We got it. So we'll start planning now. Hey, the weather's getting better. Yep. Great show on deck this morning. We got Phil O'Hara, peer recovery specialist with Hazlet's Hope Network, and a couple other groups. He's coming up first. And then in hour number 2 is the founder and president of the Ocean County-based nonprofit Recalibrate, John Roth, which helps active military men and women transition back to life here in New Jersey. So great show on deck. We got lots of great conversations that we're excited to have this morning. So Dave, get that extra cup of coffee and get yourself ready to go.
I'm good.
All right. All of you out there, get your coffee as well. We got great conversation. You're going to want to stay tuned in every minute of the show this morning.
Must listen radio is right here.
Absolutely. Every Sunday from 6 to 8 right here, 94.3 The Point, 105.7 The Hawk. More Short Time with Vin and Dave next.
Hey, it's Chris Carlin from Rutgers Football and 98.7 ESPN in New York, and you're listening to Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point and 105.7 The Hawk. These fellas are entertaining.
Whether you're in the early stages of investing, getting ready to retire, or planning your estate, you need a financial planner who will guide you on a clear path with honesty and transparency. Shoreline Wealth Management understands that you are more than your money, and they strive to help you realize your best life as they align your finances with your goals. Best of all, Shoreline's straightforward approach will include you in the process. Shoreline Wealth Management is your financial anchor. Visit shorelinewealth.com for more information. Shorelinewealth.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC.
Welcome back to Short Time with Vin and Dave. In Ebenau, Dave Crossan with you. And joining us first this morning is a friend of the station and a friend of mine who joined me on a roundtable discussion last year, Phil O'Hara, a peer recovery specialist who does work with a number of organizations, including Hazlet's Hope Network, a motivational speaker at the Les Brown Unlimited, a certified peer recovery specialist in Florida, motivational speaker, and working as the regional director of business development at Legacy Healing Center. So, Phil, welcome to the station.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
So, Phil's a great guy, so we wanted to have him in here. So, certainly appreciated your perspective on the drug addiction roundtable that you were on last year with Chief Whitkey and Hazlet, Alicia Cook, and Terrence Turnbuck. And certainly having Alicia on our show a couple weeks ago provided that perspective of, watching a loved one go through an addiction with her cousin Jessica. And Phil, you went through it yourself. Phil from Hazlet went to Raritan High School and then found himself in the throngs of that addiction to heroin and everything. And Phil, certainly I want to let you author the story here. But what led into it? Certainly we went to high school about the same time. But what got you started? Was it a peer pressure kind of thing, or was it something else that turned you on to heroin and other drugs?
So to give you the quick run through highlight reel of my story, right? I think a big problem we have when we educate young people on drugs and alcohol is, we tell them drugs and alcohol are bad and they're going to ruin their life, right? You guys have heard that before.
Sure. Right.
But what do we not tell them the first time that they drink? We don't tell them that they're going to experience fun, that it's going to physically feel good, that they could potentially have a good time. We only tell them drugs and alcohol are bad and they're going to ruin their life. But 7th grade, New Year's Eve, we snuck a peppermint schnapps up to my friend's room. All the adults were drinking and having a good time. And I had my first drink. I drank some. I physically felt good. I drank a little bit more. I felt better. After about an hour, I got the courage to call the girl I had a crush on since the 5th grade. Turns out she had a crush back. I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes. I woke up the next day with a headache and a girlfriend. that didn't exactly ruin my life, right? That was
Sure.
It was kind of an upgrade.
Falling in love?
Yeah. I mean, it was an upgrade. We had a good time. I could do without the headache, but like we had a good time.
There you go.
Instantly, everything they taught me about drugs and alcohol in school went right out the window with one night, right? Flash forward to high school. I smoked pot for the first time. Again, wasn't a negative experience. And then my life really changed in my sophomore year of high school. I had to get my tooth pulled. It was wrestling season. Wrestling's a big part of my story. I finessed my mom into pulling me out of school instead of me having miss practice, right? Like, I gotta take me out of school. So my brother picked me up, took me to the dentist, took me to the pharmacy. I filled my prescription. I got a prescription of antibiotics and a prescription of opioid painkillers. It was 2002, 2003. There wasn't all this education about opioids.
Right. Yeah.
We parents didn't really know what it was. My mom, I had these pills. They were painkillers.
Sure.
I went back to the locker room. I took 2 of them. The first thing I noticed is I physically felt good, right? I felt them enter my system. And I'm not very flexible, right? So I get into the wrestling room and, I can't really touch past my knees, but all of a sudden I go to stretch and my hands are touching the floor. Like I'm palming the floor. And I was like, whoa.
Wow.
And now I'm not, painkillers, pain. Obviously, I know why I'm touching the floor. It wasn't a mystery as to why I was this flexible. Then we start wrestling. And I'm able to wrestle harder. I have like this 6th gear out of nowhere. Coach blows the whistle to run sprints. I can't feel my legs. I can run as many sprints as you want. In fact, I'm winning every sprint. I have a physical allergy to opioids. So a normal reaction is it's a downer, it's a depressant, it's supposed to make you tired. However, my body's physically different. When I take an opioid, I get energy, right? So I found this 6th gear. I walked out of that wrestling practice. I had one of the best wrestling practices I've ever had in my life.
So you're just seeing all positives here.
All positives, right?
Yeah.
And then flash forward to my senior year. We wrestled Del Val in the state sectional finals. I have to bump up a weight class. I have a really tough match. I find my buddy who was injured on the football field that year, had a laundry list of medications, gabapentin, Xanax, opioids. I went up to that friend. I asked him for a couple of pills. I had a big match. I got him. It was very easy to get. I took him in the locker room, and I went out and won in overtime against a kid that was supposed to beat me. And we won the first state sectional in Raritan High School history, and I did it high on painkillers. Who's going to tell me at 17 years old that drugs are bad? That's just not my experience.
That's an interesting point because you're being told they're bad, but everything that you've experienced
is complete
has
opposite.
been a positive. And
my wrestling coach, Coach Nooch, who's been a constant in my life since high school, after wrestling was the only thing that really kept me going, right? After wrestling season, my senior year, I was barely showing up to school. You know what I mean? I had no interest. I knew that I was going to get passed no matter what. They weren't failing me, and Coach pulls me into the locker room like, hey, I heard you guys are drinking a lot. Hey, you're doing this. And it's like, Coach Newt's never drank in his life. That's a big part of his story, is that he's not a drinker.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Like, you're telling me not to do something that you have.
He's talking, but you're not listening at all to him.
You have no life experience in this. And, so I got to college. I fell out of college really quickly. I really just went there to wrestle, and I was out after 2 semesters. I got into the Stone Sitters Union, and that's when, pill mills and doctor shopping was really big in 2006, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, yeah.
I got introduced to a guy that showed me how to doctor shop, and I found my way into the world of over prescriptions, and unfortunately, there was a large market for it.
Explain doctor shop.
So you could go to a doctor and tell them you're in pain, and you can get a prescription, and then you can go to another doctor and tell them that you're in pain and get another prescription.
Doubling up,
and you were getting 4 or 5 prescriptions in a month.
Yeah.
And there was no system linking anything. So people were going to all these different doctors and getting all these pills, and then just selling them on the streets. And it got to a point where I didn't even need to go to the doctor. I just had other people that went to the doctors for me, and I got involved in selling pills. And again, another thing that our society does is like glorifies criminal behavior in music, in movies. You know what I mean? So as a 23-year-old kid with plenty of money, like I'm watching Sons of Anarchy, like they wrote this show about me. You know what I mean? And I'm really falling into this road that not realizing how bad it is, right? And
sure.
There's a Warren Buffett quote. You're a finance guy, right?
There you go.
There's a Warren Buffett quote. The chains that bind you are too light to feel until they're too heavy to break off of you.
There you go.
So, the more you take them, you don't realize, you're getting stuck until all of a sudden, boom, they figured out what doctor shopping was. They linked all the pharmacies. Right. They linked all this stuff. They made this federal mandate that now people went from getting 5 prescriptions to 1. And now I went from getting all these pills to being able to get very little, and I felt what it was to be sick for the first time. And it was not good. I had very high tolerance. I tried to stop on my own on the first time with a motorcycle, and I did it. I was a wrestler, right? I'm mentally tough. I had no idea about treatment or help. I just figured I could do this on my own.
Right.
I rode my motorcycle around Monmouth County for 11 days, withdrawing for 11 days, crying the whole time, listening to the Eminem Recovery album.
Wow.
And I made it 45 days, and I thought I had this thing beat. My cousin overdosed and died. I went up to his funeral, and there was pills around, environmental stuff, and that typical I'll do one. I did that.
Right.
I tried it, and I relapsed. And when I relapsed, I made a decision that I'm never going to do that again. I'm not a bad person, but I'm going to be a drug addict for the rest of my life.
That was your mindset.
I accepted the fact that I was a drug addict, and I'm going to be the best drug addict there is. And I went full blown into selling drugs again. My addiction progressed till finally I was in some legal trouble. That sent me to detox for the first time in 2014, not because I wanted to get better, but because I knew that I was getting followed by the cops, so I figured this was a good plan. I got out and relapsed again. I stopped selling drugs at that point. And from 2014 to 2016, when I didn't have the money from selling drugs and I couldn't afford pills anymore, that's when I switched to heroin because it was cheaper. And I snorted my first bag of heroin in 2014, and it felt exactly the same as that pill did in high school, right? And now that heroin buzzword that as a kid you're like, this is bad news. Like heroin is like a guy in an abandoned building.
Right.
Now it doesn't seem so bad. It's just cheaper. It's more logical.
That's an interesting point because I think people think of certain drugs and they put the face to it as this person, but yet you're talking about it and you're like, you know what? This is okay for me. It's cheaper and it works.
It's working.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, to your point, heroin, I think we brought up with Alicia Cook as well. It used to be this more expensive thing inserted via the needle, but it's become so much cheaper within the last decade that it's become popular, if you will, in different communities.
And the opioid epidemic created a market where there wasn't markets. You know what I mean? You would have to go into Newark to go get stuff, where now they've expanded to you could get stuff in any town in this county or in this state. You know what I mean? You don't have to drive to Newark or Jersey City to go get it anymore.
Right.
So it's become more available as well.
That's an interesting point. The other thing too is with drugs, you're thinking you've got to go to these dangerous areas in
in like urban areas or whatever.
And yet you're saying local. Here it is.
I've
you can get it.
bought so much stuff off unassuming housewives. You know what I mean? People that husbands have a full-time job, or they themselves have a full-time job, but it's not the people that you think it is, and it's not these vast criminal empires either. It's just literally people that are leaning on each other to get by and not get sick and make just enough to get what they need, so I ran for 2 more years. Finally the drug stopped working. It stopped having the effect. I take drugs because they take away my pain.
So now your tolerance is
going
high.
So high that I'm not even getting high anymore. I'm just not sick. So I'd use drugs and I would just not be sick anymore. But I wouldn't feel good. I was just miserable. And then I was also a steroid user too. That was a big part of how I hid my addiction. I didn't look like what the stereotypical drug addict, all skinny. I maintained a bigger weight. So I had these needles in my bathroom, and I was sick, and I didn't have enough money to get me through till payday, and I had these 3 bags left, and I made the decision to shoot heroin for the first time. And there was a man named Darren Rogers in Sunrise Detox in 2014 that said, "Son, you need to go get help." And I said, "No, I need to stop selling drugs and hanging out with motorcycle clubs and hanging out in bars, and I'll be okay." And as I swear to God, as I started to send that needle towards my arm, I heard that guy's voice, and I just remember him saying, "Kid, you need to go get help." And in my head, I was like, I'm going to go get help. Not today, but
at some point.
We're moving in the direction of help is coming.
Right.
Yeah.
But not today. And I injected for the first time. I injected for about 4 months. And I lost my job. I lost the girl. My car got stolen in Kingsburg. I was living in Kingsburg at the time. I was so out of it that I would lose my car keys. So I just started leaving my keys in the ignition because it was easier to not lose them.
Yeah.
And some 15-year-old kid, was going through cars and just took it for a joyride, and they didn't find it for 3 weeks. It was in Middletown somewhere, but my car got stolen, and I called out of work that day, and I got fired because I wasn't really the best employee, So
Sure.
So I took my layoff check and I bought the last amount of drugs I had and locked myself in a house for a couple of days. Finally, my mom called me and, she said, call the union and get on the list. And I was like, no. She said, call your student loans and get on forbearance. I said, you're out of your mind. And just leave me alone. And I hung up on her. And next thing I know, I hear her car pull up, and my mom's this little 4'11" woman. I hear her heels clip-clopping up my driveway, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And she comes in and she says, you're using again. And I said, yep. And she said, go get help. And I said, absolutely. And I think she was shocked, right? Doesn't this require an intervention,
Sure, yeah,
right.
yeah.
I had experienced enough pain. I was so miserable at the end that I couldn't do drugs. They weren't working. I wanted something else. I made a phone call to a high school teammate, Richie Bryant, who was working for a treatment center. He got me scholarshiped into a facility in Florida. I went down there and I took the opportunity. However, my last night in Hazlet, it got a little crazy. I knew I was going to treatment, right? I did the assessments and I decided I was going to go, and instantly the first thing I felt was fear. Right? What is my life going to be like without these drugs that I use to cope?
Sure.
And I looked at my mom and I said, I need $60. And my mom said, why? Now, up until this point, I didn't rob anybody except for my mother. I didn't rob stores, I didn't rob people, but I would always finesse my mom into paying my cell phone bill that was already paid or my electric bill that was already paid. I could always get money out of my mom. And she asked me why, and I couldn't even come up with a good lie. I just said I need to get high. And she, this is one of the worst moments of my addiction. She went to the ATM in tears and got me $60 and was so afraid that was going to be the bag that killed me, but there was nothing. Like, I was going to go get it no matter what. I start driving to Jersey City. I get pulled over by the Hazlet police, a girl I went to high school with, for a suspended license. I didn't have any drugs on me or anything like that. And I get arrested for a suspended license. They bring me into the police department. They let me go in a half hour on a summons, and I'm sick at this point. So my mom picks me up. She takes me back to the house, says, promise me you're not going to drive. I said, Scout's honor, not going to drive. I ran into the house. I grabbed my girl's keys off the hook. I didn't even say hello to her, this poor girl that I had taken hostage. I just took the keys off the hook, ran out of the house. My mom pulls away. I get in my girl's car, and I drive out of the neighborhood. And the insanity of this story is when I got to the light, my mom's at the light. There's a car there, and then I'm the car behind her.
Oh,
like,
wow.
I couldn't even wait for her to get out of the area. And there was a bar across the street, and I just threw a Hail Mary, like hoping that somebody was in there that had drugs. And I went in, and the guy was there, and it worked out, right? And I get out of there, and I'm going back to my house to use, and I cross the double yellow line as I'm looking down and counting my bags to make sure I didn't get ripped off, and I get lit up again by the Hazlet police. And it's another kid that I went to high school with, and he's, Phil, dude, what are you doing? We just let you go.
Oh, boy.
And I just said, all right, dude, take me in. And I stuffed my stuff under the seat. And again, like, I there was no reason to search my car, right? Like, I just had a traffic violation and a suspended license. So luckily they didn't search. And he takes me to the police department, and now I'm there again for the second time in 45 minutes. And now this is the intervention that I had was, 3 or 4 guys that I grew up with that are now cops coming into a room that all knew me as a good kid growing up, just like, what is going on, bro? Like, you need to go get help. And I said, listen, I did the assessments. I'm going tomorrow. And I think 50% they were happy. The other 50% didn't really believe that I was actually going to get on the plane. You know what I mean? And no, I went home. I got back to my car. I used that final amount of heroin, and I actually overdosed. I didn't get Narcan. Most people see Narcaning as like an overdose.
Right.
I used, my heart rate dropped enough that I fell out. I fell down on the bathroom floor.
Wow.
And I woke up like 4 hours later on the bathroom floor.
Wow.
I didn't even know that was an overdose till I got to treatment. And the therapist was like, you realize you overdosed and you could have died? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, no. If you wake up 4 hours later, that's because you overdosed. So I overdosed on the bathroom floor. I woke up the next morning. my mom's friend, nice lady Ethel, who's a very church-goey lady, picked me up and took me to the airport, and she was my angel. And I went to treatment. And and that's what started this road.
Phil, Dave and I have to go to a break, but we want to dive into your journey into recovery with what happened next. Can you hang with us?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. More Short Time with Vin, Dave, and Phil O'Hara right after this.
Hi, this is high performance executive coach Dana Cavalier and former director of strength and conditioning for the New York Yankees. And you're listening to Shore Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point and 105.7 The Hawk. It's always great to hang with champions, and these two guys are champions.
Whether you're in the early stages of investing, getting ready to retire, or planning your estate, you need a financial planner who will guide you on a clear path with honesty and transparency. Shoreline Wealth Management understands that you're more than your money, and they strive to help you realize your best life as they align your finances with your goals. Best of all, Shoreline's straightforward approach will include you in the process. Shoreline Wealth Management is your financial anchor, committed to helping you weather life's storms. Visit shorelinewealth.com for more information today. Shorelinewealth.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.
Welcome back to Short Time with Vin and Dave. Vin Ebenau, Dave Crossan with you. And with us this morning is Phil O'Hara, a peer recovery specialist who took us in the first segment through his battle with addiction and closed out that first segment with him about to get on a plane to head to recovery. So, Phil, it was a very deep story. I mean, you kind of went through so much and went into great detail. So when your mom's friend Ethel drove you to the airport, what were some of your feelings going on the plane, and how did everything work when you went to the facility and started rehab?
Unfortunately, my first thought was, can I get Ethel to stop in Newark before we get to the airport? But
That's a tough ask.
Yeah.
She's just such a good lady that I was like, well, I guess that was my last use.
What was that flight like? I gotta think it must have taken. I mean, with everything that you're going through.
Unfortunately, I had some benzos that I had saved, so I took some benzodiazepines before I got on the plane, and I had 2 glasses of wine. I really don't even remember the plane ride too much. I numbed my feelings out because I was just so scared, right?
Sure.
And then I remember the guy at the escalator that picked me up, and he had a big smile, and he drove me, from Fort Lauderdale Airport up to Port St. Lucie to the program Amethyst that I had went to, and that was a great, first impressions are everything, right? I was met by a guy that genuinely cared, you know what I mean? He liked his job. He was in recovery. He enjoyed picking people up and getting them well. And I went into treatment, and my buddy Richie Bryant was there, which was so beneficial because I felt like such a freak at 28 years old going to treatment. Like you feel like a circus animal, you know what I mean? Like being looked at, like judged, whatever,
Sure.
And when Richie showed up to work, it was my friend from high school, so I felt a little bit more normal when he was there, you know what I mean? Like it helped me
kind of like that familiar face.
And the other part of this was I was really out of my mind. The addiction damages the prefrontal cortex of the brain. It completely shuts it down, which is the part of your brain that controls all rational thoughts. You're running on survival instinct. So I was a little crazy when I first got down there. I was very angry. I had a lot of emotional pain. I was very short-tempered. So treatment was very difficult for me because there was those kids that didn't take it serious, and of course I'm there to get better, right? So I'm getting mad at the guys that are just not taking it. It's like little things are just really hypersensitive about, Sure. And in 45 days I learned how to not be aggressive to handle my emotions. I cried a lot, you know what I mean? I did a lot of crying. And it wasn't bad. It felt good. I felt like a wet towel that was getting wrung out, you know what I mean? And I got to some of the core stuff between my parents' divorce and where it went wrong, like stuff that I just kind of stuffed down, and people, they call treatment centers. They need to call them separation centers because you're not going there to get cured. You're going there to get some separation from the streets and from the drugs and to get a bird's eye view of what's wrong in your life.
Makes sense.
You don't walk out of treatment cured, right? You walk out of treatment a very, very fragile person in early recovery that the slightest thing could set you off. And I made it about 60 days. I was living in Port St. Lucie. I was going to meetings, and my aunt died of an overdose in New Jersey. So I get a phone call from Coach Nooch at 8:30 in the morning on a Sunday, and I knew somebody died. I thought it was Coach Dunnels, our wrestling coach, who was a little bit older. And I said, "What?" I said, "Who died? Was it Coach Dunnels?" And he said, "No, it was Aunt Debbie." My cousins were wrestling on the team for him at that point, so he was very tight with my family. And I was shocked, right?
Sure.
And like my substance abuse is in my family. It's a multi-generational thing. Hopefully that this is a generation that it ends. But I was shocked. I got on a plane that night. I wasn't planning on going home. I hadn't been planning on going home for a long time. And I got on a plane to go home, and I made it home. And as soon as I was home, I was uncomfortable, but I didn't realize what it was. I made it about 48 hours, and I went to go see a friend. And her roommate walked in and said, "Hey, I got my Adderall script." Ugh. And that's all it took for that mental obsession to kick in my head. And I was like, "Ooh, Adderall?" And I was like, "Let me get one." And they were like, "You just got a rehab." I was like, "I just got a rehab for heroin. Excuse me, this is Adderall, completely different, not the same." And they were like, "Yeah, no, dude." But that obsession to use popped in my head. And I left after about 30 minutes when I realized they weren't giving me anything, and I drove to my buddy's house, who I knew had heroin, who was still in active addiction. And I said, "Listen, let me get a bag." And he said, "No." And this kid cares about me. "No, you're doing good. I'm not giving this to you." I think a big misconception is that like addicts don't care about one another, you know what I mean? Or they just want to see, that's not true.
Right.
You know, when my friend saw I was doing good, he really did not want me to go down the wrong path like he was still on. Yeah. And I said, "Listen, I'm either going to pay you for that bag or I'm going to fight you for that bag. So you're going to give it to me." And at that point, he was like, "Dude, whatever, here you go." And I went into the bathroom and I wasn't going to shoot it, right? Because I didn't want to overdose and die. But I tore the bag open to snort it, and I looked at it like, I shouldn't do this. I don't want to do this. Like, I just went to rehab for this, but I did not have the power to say no. And I did it, thinking that I knew it was going to be bad. The first day was great, right? The first day I used it, physically felt good again, right? That feeling that I had lost when I went to treatment, it was there. And I was like, oh, I remember, and then the second day wasn't as good as the first. And by the third and fourth day of using, I was completely miserable again. And I was like, what am I doing? So I got through the funeral. I got back down to Florida, and I got back to getting help and getting a program, and that was June 3rd, 2016. And my life changed. I'm grateful for that relapse because I really needed to understand how miserable I really was. And 45, 60 days separated from the misery and seeing how good I felt to going real quick, real fast into the misery again, it was like, all right, that switch.
That was it. That's what you needed. Okay.
And like I said, when I decided I was going to be the best drug addict I've ever been, you know what I mean? I made a decision that I was going full tilt into this recovery thing. My buddy Richie said, "Listen, stay down here, stay sober. I'll get you a job in treatment." And I did construction for a while until I had enough sober time to get working for the facility that got me sober. And I started in housing, which was a great job. I was working with working on the sober livings, making sure people were sober. And, at 28, I was a lot older than a lot of the kids that were going to treatment. They're 21, 22, 23. So I didn't have much recovery for them, but I had like a lot of life advice for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got really addicted at like 23, so I experienced some things. A lot of these kids are coming in, they've been addicted since they were 16, 17. They have no life skills, no coping skills. So I really enjoyed that. They sent me for a recovery coach training. I loved that. I was listening to a lot of motivational stuff, Les Brown. I found out he had a motivational speaking institute, and I went there. And at that point, I was afraid to hear my voice on a microphone through speakers. I was afraid, like I couldn't do it. I would choke up on a mic.
Oh, sure.
And they throw you up on stage, and like that institute was more about knocking the cobwebs out, about just speaking in front of a room full of people. And I fell in love with it, like instantly. Like once I got past being afraid of it, I fell in love. And that's when I knew I wanted to go, like this is where I started setting goals, right? Like having goals is what saved my life. And one of the goals was I wanted to go back into high schools. I wanted to speak. We started at Raritan. Coach Nooch went live, and it went all over, and I got 3 more schools from that in the Bayshore area. I met this guy, Michael DeLeon, with Steered Straight, who goes across the country. He started sending me to Indiana, Iowa, all these different places to
That's
speak.
great.
It's awesome.
My job sent me to the Arise Interventionist training with Judith Landau, and I got trained to be an interventionist, and it just kind of spurred into all these different things. And then, Hazlet Hope started, which has kind of been the best thing that I have been a part of since finding recovery. So Chief Meehan and Chief Whitkey in Hazlet, they met with us. There was a need for guys like me that were getting arrested multiple times with bail reform. We're just arresting people, letting them go, arresting people and letting them go. There was a program in Gloucester, Massachusetts that had people going into the police department upon arrest, people in recovery. We told them about that, and both the chiefs agreed that it was a good idea. And this kid that was a nuisance to Hazlet for a very long time, a well-known nuisance, was now allowed to go into the police department with other volunteers and start helping people. And that's how Hazlet Hope started. Upon arrest, we go into the department, we talk to people that need help, and see if they want it. And a lot of times people get arrested the first time and they're like, dude, get out of here, I don't have a problem.
Right.
And then they get arrested a second or third time and you're back and it's the same coach. It's like, hey, what happened 2 weeks ago when you said there wasn't a problem?
Sure.
And then that second and third contact is when we're able to move them towards the direction of recovery. And then Keyport and Hazlet, what I love about working in these departments and from the civilian aspect, especially my criminal side of it, is like you have this perception of police, and then you get inside the department and actually get to work with these guys. Number one, they're hysterical. All of them, they're great. But the interagency work in specifically Monmouth and Ocean counties is really amazing, right?
Yeah.
These departments communicate with one another. So when the chief in Keyport, Mark Hafner, and now Chief Shannon Torres heard that this was working, they allowed us into that department. Then it spurred to Keyport, Homedale, Kingsburg, Union Beach, Hazlet, and Red Bank.
That's awesome.
That call us for help for people in the community. So that's been, I think, the greatest thing that I have been a part of since finding recovery, not only for the people that we've helped, but for the change in culture inside the departments, because this is the first generation of cop our age that have lost friends to addiction that were good kids, right? So they know that this isn't like a bad guy type thing. I think the older generation of cop, it was like good guys, bad guys, and these are bad guys, right? This newer generation, they really have a lot of empathy. They've lost family members, right? And they want to help the people that they come across. And to see the shift in the department and see it trickle up to some of the older guys that when this first came in were kind of like, I don't know about this. Right. That are now like the number one guys to call, that are our biggest advocates. Like, hey, we got to call these guys. They can help you. You know what I mean? And it's like, that has been awesome to be a part of. And I think that needs to be said right now in a time where, police don't really get a lot of good things said about them. Our county, specifically these two counties, the law enforcement has really, really shifted into trying to get these people help.
Yeah, no, agreed. Prosecutors in both counties, both sheriffs in Ocean and Monmouth County, and just law enforcement in general, just kind of dedicated to trying to get people on the right track. And to your point as well, it's, the old school is kind of thinking in society in general is like, if you're using drugs, you're a bad person. But I mean, Phil is just one of the examples
That's a great
of
point.
It's good people who become addicted and kind of entrapped, but good people, you go to talk to them, and you could have a great conversation, have some fun, get to know the inner person there, and just great people who are struggling with something. And I think it's great that law enforcement at the Jersey Shore and beyond is doing even more these days to help people find recovery.
It's not a moral failing of the individual.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
One of my coworkers, I didn't know her in active addiction. And she is like the sweetest, most polite, like well-dressed, well-kept person, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then, we've worked together for a year now, and stories after hours, people start talking about the insanity of where our lives went. And, some of the stuff she told me, like, my jaw is on the floor because I'm like, I just can't see you doing any of that. You know what I mean? But the reality is that addiction will make you do some really crazy things. And
sure. And,
I'm sure there's some people that know her prior to getting sober that haven't seen her since what she is now, and still have in their heads that person is a bad person. You know what I mean? But I didn't know that person. I know this person. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's still people out there that I owe apologies to that, hear my voice and cringe on these radio stations. But the reality is, who I am today is not who I was, and I'm not ashamed of who I was either. I really, like, people ask me, like, would you change anything? No, I truly believe that everything happened to me for a reason. That this was my purpose.
Your journey.
I am living in my purpose, and this was just laid out before me. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter how bad the person gets, they can get better. Like I do a lot of intervention work, and I think a lot of family members get so angry with what the person's doing that they just give up. And like, we can't help this person. We can't help this person. And it's their loved one. And listen, there's no helping them. You can help up until the point of them being in a coffin. Up until that, there's nothing you can't do. Right?
Never
You
too
can
late.
continue to move the ball forward and try and help that individual until they're done breathing. You know, there's help out there for interventions. You know, I think a lot of people. All right, for example, you do finances, right?
Correct.
Could I structure my 401k on my own as well as you could?
No, I would hope not.
Right? I really have.
No, I don't. I don't mean it that way. And
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to bring up is, part of what we do here with the show, I'd love to put out the educational piece so that somebody can, if they don't have assistance, can make good decisions.
So I'll be honest with you, I have no idea how to do it.
Right.
This guy comes in once a year, I sit with him, he opens up my ADP app and tells me what to do, and I'm just like, okay. Right? And for some reason, when it comes to substance abuse and helping your family members, people with no experience like to tell everybody how to do it. But they have no idea. They've never done it.
I'm glad you went that
great
way.
point.
That's a great point.
So, like, you wouldn't go build a house without a construction guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Makes
You're
sense.
not going to be able to build the house. But
Right.
for some reason, this is one of those things where, like, people are like, oh, no, we just got to do this or we just got to do that. You've never helped somebody
Good point.
get
Yeah.
out of a basement using drugs and depression. So why do you think you know how to do it? The best thing that you could do is just tag somebody in that knows how to do it and can
There you
help
go.
you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And very often, it's got to be somebody outside the family. As an interventionist, the biggest mistake I've ever made was trying to help somebody who I loved and facilitate the intervention on my own because my ego told me that I could do it. And it went off the rails immediately.
And
I should have brought somebody outside into the situation that was unbiased. There wasn't emotional ties there. You got to take somebody from the outside that is just not involved.
And everybody's
Right.
unique and everybody's different. So
Yeah.
some people might be like, oh, just tough love, go this direction, that's going to do it. Well, no, there's a lot going on with all of us. And obviously the direction you went, there were things that you found out.
So you're dealing with somebody who was adopted, right? And their core emotional status from a child was I was abandoned. I was abandoned by my real mom. I was abandoned by this person, right? And then that person who's dealing with abandonment issues, you're going to abandon. You're going to tough love to death. And
Yeah, there you go.
you know what I mean?
Good point.
You like each case is individual. You know what I mean? There is no one size fits all. I hear that all the time working in treatment, but it's really there's no one size fits all solution. And then there's the other ones that are super entitled that if you don't start pulling back resources, I mean, unfortunately, they've taken control of the family, right? You walk into an environment where the child is running the show, yelling at mom, go make this, yelling at dad to go do this, and they're so in fear that their child's that they're like taking orders. You know what I mean? That's a different situation where it's like, hey, listen, guess what you're going to do? You're going to turn the cell phone bill off. You're going to do this. You're going to start pulling this people. And the person of concern will be like, what? And their whole world's going to go upside down. That's a different case.
Sure.
Than the kid that's adopted that just has real abandonment issues that you need to do the opposite. You need to surround him with love.
Right.
To get him to realize that he's not alone. You know what I mean? It's so individualized. It really is. And honestly, I hate when I talk about interventions with such enthusiasm because I love the art of intervention so much because it's somebody that's struggling, right? But that being said, it's the closest thing I've ever had to winning a wrestling match in my life, right? I go into a situation, you're nervous, you never know how it's going to go, how the person's going to react. I have about 45 seconds to make this person not hate me right off the jump. You know what I mean? And then eventually I'm able to get that person that hated me going through the door into getting help. And then not only that, but they're calling me, thanking me months later, and it's like, dude, thank you.
Awesome.
You did
Sure.
it. You did it. Please stop giving me the credit. You made the decision to go get help. But these relationships form. You know what I mean? Some of the closest people I have in my life are people that I've done interventions on because there's a bond and a trust that builds, and there's a handful of people that have been in my life 2 years, 3 years, and it's because I did an intervention with them.
Phil, as we wrap up here, just want to ask one more question of you, especially in today's kind of society, whether it's the consequences of New Jersey's bail reform laws that I know many in law enforcement, sheriffs have been advocating for that it needs to change because it's creating a revolving door in correctional facilities, and just the availability of drugs. I mean, we talked about, when we were in high school, what kind of drugs were out there, and now it's, cheaper heroin that's out there. There's meth, crack, cocaine, and now most recently in New Jersey, recreational marijuana is now legal. So how complicated do you see things now with either people being tempted to use any one of those drugs I just mentioned or others, and in trying for those who are going through it right now and trying to find recovery?
So this is where we go down the road of, I don't want to use the word controversial, but what I will say is my views that I'm about to give are my own. They're
Right.
not the views of Hazlet Hope. They're not the views of Legacy Healing Center. They're not the views of Steered Straight. These are my own views. Bail reform, while I understand bail reform, I get so many phone calls from parents that says, can't I just lock him up like he's got drugs on him?
Sure.
And, no, unfortunately, he's going to get arrested and released and arrested and released and arrested and released, right? So that separation, and this is, again, controversial. There's clinicians that'll be like, there's no, clinical data that says that them going to jail for that week does anything, right? But I know enough personal stories of people that dried out in the county jail, and that's when they had their, awakening that this was not for them, right? So we're not able to dry people out that, should be getting arrested, right? And then, so that's a problem, right? And then the other part of this is, we're legalizing marijuana, and everyone is so happy about this, right? But the marijuana that we're legalizing right now is not the marijuana that I was smoking in high school in 2005 that was 10 to 12% pure THC, right? We have commercialized marijuana. We've given it to scientists, big pharma, big commercial marijuana companies, and they have genetically modified this marijuana, and they have taken it from 12% THC in the plant up to 45% in the plant, right? So you can go into a shop now and go buy super potent marijuana, the plant, 35, 45%. But we've taken it a step further. We've shot butane and propane through this marijuana, coming up with a concentrated THC oil. And this is where people are going to come for my head on social media when they read this, because there's a lot of marijuana advocates that refuse to acknowledge what I'm about to say. We are seeing psychosis from young people and people of all different ages from smoking concentrated THC dab pens, right? I did not believe this the first time I heard it until I went on an intervention, and the guy was talking about hearing voices and seeing demons. And, I joke with my wife that, I should take the civil service exam and be a drug recognition expert. You know what I mean? Though, because I know who's on what, right? Like I could walk in and my wife says, "What's that guy on?" And I could tell her. And when I walked in to assess the situation, he told me what he was experiencing, and I said, how much meth have you smoked and how many days you've been awake? And he was like, no, I just smoked my weed pen. And I was like, all right, well, like LSD, mushrooms, some type. No, just my weed pen. We took him to Carrier Clinic. We got the drug test results. It was only THC. Since then, I've done 5 interventions on people that were in psychosis, in manic states, from concentrated THC oils. The one kid thought the buttons on his shirt were cameras that his parents had placed on there, that there was microphones in his room. And when you're dealing with mental health, it's a different type of intervention.
Right.
And I had said, if I could take you somewhere that made the cameras go away, would you go? And he said, yeah, right now. And, we got him into a mental health facility. But it was just THC. And then the problem is a lot of treatment centers, insurance companies will not authorize treatment for marijuana. They will not authorize it.
It makes
but you have to get them into a mental health facility. And in this state, there's not a lot of mental health facilities that aren't hospital based, or you know what I mean? Like there's levels of mental health. There's people in there that are having auditory hallucinations that, want to stab people. And then there's people that are, manic and but they're all kind of together, right? So there's a huge need for mental health right now.
Absolutely.
Vaping in our middle schools and high schools has tremendously skyrocketed, and that's the most addictive substance we have, right? So we're hooking kids at 13, 14 on nicotine at the rate of like 40% in middle schools and 70 to 90% in high schools.
It's crazy.
Right? And it's a progressive disease. So what is that kid going to be addicted to at 23, at 33, right? We're priming their brains for addiction now with marijuana, with alcohol, with THC. And then methamphetamine is going to explode in this state, right? So people are dying from fentanyl. We've done a great job of educating kids that fentanyl is killing people. So kids aren't using fentanyl or they're not using heroin. But we haven't addressed the underlying causes and conditions as to why they need to escape in the first place. And they're moving to benzos, they're moving to alcohol, they're moving to Adderall. And then Adderall is leaving this huge void, just like opiates did for methamphetamine. And now we are seeing in the state of New Jersey, which we never saw, methamphetamine was like a Tennessee thing. We're seeing methamphetamine explode on Long Island, explode in New York, and it's going to get worse. And when that meth bomb goes off, it's going to make the opiate epidemic look like a joke, right? Because not as many people are going to be dying, but there's going to be a lot of people that are just out of their minds doing crazy things. So I hate to say this, we're not going in the right direction right now. You know, COVID didn't help, lockdowns didn't help.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Social media doesn't help. Facebook does not help. You know, it's a great tool when used properly, but it's a distraction device, and it's all negative. The algorithms just feed us negative stuff. So we're just kind of slowly disconnecting. I mean, families are fighting over politics and not talking to each other. You know what I mean? And addiction, the solution to addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. It's connecting with other human beings. And we are slowly becoming more of an isolated society, which is why the numbers are continuing to go up.
Phil, one last bonus question here real quick. The bonus round as we close up on a lighter note. So obviously you mentioned your wife, so recent marriage, congrats, and you're a new father as well. So what's that been like? Congrats.
She's fantastic.
June 19th, we are expecting our baby girl, and it's something I never thought I'd be able to experience. I always wanted a kid.
Sure.
But I always knew how much I was dependent on my mom. You know what I mean? So, thank God I didn't think a kid would fix me. I knew I wasn't in a position to have a kid. And then I got sober and I reconnected with my wife, who I had met in college. So that short time that I was there, she stayed, I didn't, right? You know, I found my partner and we, you know, had the fairy tale wedding that I never thought I'd be able to have. And, you know, we didn't wait too long. And, you know, now we're going to be having a baby about 6 days before our first wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
And
that's awesome, dude.
And it's a baby girl, and I'm super stoked. I'm glad I got a girl. You know, I'm going to be a girl dad. So I'm really, I never thought this would be a thing, and it is, you know.
Phil, appreciate you sharing your whole journey, your battle through addiction, recovery, and kind of offering some perspective on where things are at now. So with all the organizations that you're with, including Hazlet's Hope Network, please continue to do what you're doing, because you're affecting real and direct change everywhere.
Thank you. And I just want to say, if you're listening to this and you know, you have a loved one that's struggling, and we do have a crisis line for Hazlet Hope. It's a recorded line. It's 100% confidential. You could reach out and talk to a recovery coach that could help deploy out and facilitate an intervention for your family, or if it's just you that's struggling. The phone number is 732-739-7717, and that's available 24/7 to anybody in New Jersey.
Thank you for
so
adding
much.
that in as well. So
important.
do whatever we can to help people find recovery and encourage others to do the same as well. So Phil, appreciate you as always coming on here and talking about everything. We really appreciate it, and you're welcome back here anytime.
Thank you, guys. This is a huge honor, and I had a lot of fun. So, you know, if you want to call me back for stuff that's not addiction related, I'll still come back. You know?
sounds like a
Phil
plan.
O'Hara here anytime. More Short Time with Vin and Dave next as we head into hour number 2.
Hello, this is Chef David Burke on Short Time with Vin and Dave on 94.3 The Point and 105.7 The Hawk. And if you could see us, you'd know the three of us have perfect faces for radio.
Whether you're in the early stages of investing, getting ready to retire, or planning your estate, you need a financial planner who will guide you on a clear path with honesty and transparency. Shoreline Wealth Management provides clarity through the complexity with offices in Manchester and Manahawkin. Shoreline Wealth Management is your financial anchor. Visit shorelinewealth.com for more information and start your financial journey with comfort and security today. Shorelinewealth.com. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC.